So here is the Edpuzzle for Project 2, Jeff's blog. In section 1 of Project 2, you were creating a list for the first time. So remember, when you create a list, you start the list, whether it's a UL or an OL if you're making it a numbered list. You start the list above your items and you close the list below where your list finishes. So the UL on line 8 here. And then I close the UL down here on line 14 after I'm done listing the items. And these spaces don't matter. Also remember, as you complete skills in these projects, the skills tab unlocks different skills. So you can see this one's still locked. But like the ones that I've learned to do, those are unlocked. So you can look back to what the information was, like for background, and it also shows you not only information and says it sets the background of an element to either a color or image or both. It shows you an example of how to do that. Background, the hashtag 000 references black if you wanted to make the background black. And the URL part of the example shows you how to set the background to an image if you want to do an image. The example is coding both black and an image at the same time. So be careful that you don't just copy the example and that you actually read what the example says. The next thing we did in Jeff's lab is that you had an H1 again. That was something normal. You put in an image. Remember, there's an attribute with image, SRC. Also remember that you have the URL here to access the photo. And the final thing that you did, you created this header tag, which is a new piece of HTML5, the header tag. That's a new to create this section up here above the rest of your website. Kind of like if you looked at a website that had navigation, you would have created it for that. And you did links. Now your links won't send me anywhere because they're blank. In a real website, this would send me to, between the quotations, you'd actually have a web address. So www.code.org. And then if I clicked on this link, it would take me to code.org. Okay. So the next lesson that you did was Jeff 1 or 2. Styling your header. So in order to style that header tag, I had to create a header selector. So these are the things that you're doing to that header section. All the information in the header should be centered. It says text align center. The background covers the whole background because you said background size, I want that picture to cover. You set up a background in your CSS and you made all the font in that header section white. So anything that was in that header tag from line 37 to line 45 has those styles applied to it. You also did some work with other selectors. You edited the image and you gave it a margin. You put a border around the image, 7 pixels solid white, and you created a border radius is what curves these corners. Finally, you, or not finally, but you styled the link and made the links white, the About Me links. The H1, you changed the font size to size 70 to make it look bigger. Your UL, you gave padding on this left and right. You put 10 pixels of padding everywhere, and you made the background black behind those links. And you gave the list items, each of these items in your list, you made them display in a line instead of being up and down. And you put padding between them so that they were spaced apart. So you can scroll down and see what each item that you've styled up here looks like. But that was lesson 2. And finally, lesson 3 of Jeff, adding the buttons. And so Jeff wanted you to like his poems, so he put these like buttons. You created those buttons with the button tag, button, and then whatever you want the button to say. So if I wanted to say no like, I can come down and see where that button is right here at the bottom of my screen. Okay, so you can type whatever you want on the button between those tags. You also learned a tag called the article tag. The article tag is like a container. It's kind of like if you go to lunch and you pack a sandwich and you have pudding. Each of those items are in containers so that they don't touch each other. That's all the article tag does. Tags like article, div, section, main, all of them are just container tags that hold stuff together. So you put each of his poems, you chunked them together, you put the heading of the poem, you put the poetry, the paragraph, the button, all of that in the same container. You put it in the same Tupperware together. It's like putting your bread, your meat, and your cheese all in one place together. And you did that for each poem. You put each poem inside its own little Ziploc bag. So if I thought about it like that, I have one Ziploc bag, two Ziploc bags, and on my screen, a third storage container, 3 containers. That way, when you come up here and you style them, that whole container is going to be 500 pixels wide. I'm going to give it padding on each side, and there's going to be no margin. I can style that container to make it look different. If I give it a background, you can see what happens. Background to each container. Background blue. I spelled background wrong. That would be the problem. Background blue. Okay. And why isn't that not going on? It should color behind each of your things. I'm wondering if there's a style that's overriding it. Background, there's no background in the body. Swatch should not. That is interesting. Header, background has that image. No, Miss Watts, I'll have to look at why that's not working. But it should be able to color it. Behind each article, which is interesting that it's not. I can make the color red. I guess you can't give them a background, which is interesting. I'm going to try that one more time. There we go. I was wondering why it wasn't working before, but you can see now that behind each article, blue, 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 the whole body is not blue. Watch, I can show you what that looks like. If you want the whole website to be a color, you can style the body like we've done in the past and give the whole website a background pink. And now you see the pink applies to where the whole website is, whereas the blue only applies to each article section. So that's kind of something new you learned this time too. You also added that link to add your style sheet to an external style sheet, what we'll be doing for your final project. And you learned about a media query. A media query is something that occurs to show what happens when your screen is a different size. So we pull up our websites mostly on cell phones these days. So let's say if I change the background of my website to, let's say we're going to make the whole website black when I'm on a cell phone. Just going to make the whole thing black. I'm going to change those articles. Okay. So when I put this website on a cell phone, you can see when the screen gets smaller that the background is black. When I'm on a desktop. So this is really good because, like, for instance, on a desktop, my navigation, his links can be horizontal. When I put it on a cell phone, and that would crunch it so the code makes them vertical on a cell phone. So that's what the media query does. It allows you to set up separate styles down here at the bottom of your style section. It's all the way at the bottom of your selectors. You enter this media query and you say, when my screen is narrow, 500 pixels wide, then I want these other things to happen. And that allows you to code for when someone pulls up your website on an iPad, on a laptop, on a cell phone, different screen sizes. You can have different media queries. And then the normal stuff where you want your normal code, that's up top here. Okay, so that's a media query. You learned that. And that brings us to the end of Jeff. So you should be building your own blog, and it can be about anything you want. And you're changing again the colors, the styles, the words, etc.